Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another in the series from the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the Smithville Public Library, bringing you a great series of business-friendly, business-focused classes that will help you as we continue to get through this pandemic, as well as you continue to grow your businesses. We're excited to have a great speaker today from First National Bank, but before I introduce her, I want to introduce our Public Library Director, Judy Bergeron, who will talk with us a little bit about this program and the great agencies that are helping us bring these classes to you. Judy.
Thank you very much, April. As April said, there are a couple agencies that have made this available through grant funding, and they are the Institute for Museum and Library Services and the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. Libraries have long supported small businesses with the help of both of those agencies, and they're allowing us to do this at this time and offer this wonderful series that the Chamber has put together. And without further ado, I'm going to let April introduce our speaker today. It's a very important topic, and I'm glad you're all here.
Thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. And on behalf of the library, Judy has said that she wants to be sure that you all know as business owners that they are there to help. If you need help submitting your PPP application or you need some technical assistance, the library is there to help you. Am I correct in that, Judy?
Yes, you are. Thank you. I forgot to add that.
Of course.
I appreciate it, April.
No problem. Thank you, Judy. So today our speaker is Stacy Tyner. She's the branch manager here for the First National Bank of Bastrop at the Smithville location. She's also a loan officer. Stacy has 13 years of banking experience and was involved with the Paycheck protection program in both rounds. She can help answer questions you may have about the program and is planning to give us a great presentation. So without further ado, Stacy, take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining in on the training. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and the topics that I'm going to be talking about, it's all factual stuff that came from the SBA, so I'll have the resources available at the end of the slide with links that you can access it as well. So. Okay, so all this information, like I said, comes from the Small Business Administration, the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the second round, whether you are a first-time borrower or a second draw borrower. And just our little disclosure for the bank, the information presented in this presentation summarizes guidance or interim final rules provided by the Small Business Administration and/or the Department of the Treasury, based on the existing information available at the time of this presentation. It is intended only for informational purposes to act as a quick reference and not as a substitute for the law, regulations, or official commentary. There are continuing ongoing developments in this area. Always consult with official sources of information, including the regulation text and official commentary. Any opinions expressed during the presentation are statements of the speaker, my opinion, and are not formal opinions of nor binding on the First National Bank of Bastrop. So who's eligible to apply? The following entities are a few that are eligible to apply that are affected by COVID-19, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed persons. Any business concern that meets the SBA's size standards, either the industry size standard or the alternative size standard. Any business that's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, 501c6 organization, 501c19 veterans organization, or tribal business concern of the Small Business Act. Business must have been in operation prior to or on February 15th of 2020 and had employees for whom they paid salaries and payroll taxes as reported on a Form 1099 miscellaneous, or were an eligible self-employed individual, independent contractor, or sole proprietor with no employees. An entity that has permanently closed is not eligible to receive a PPP loan. If you had a temporary close, if you were temporarily closed or suspended its business, you still are eligible for a PPP loan. If this is your first time applying for a PPP loan, the maximum loan amount is 10 million and you must not employ more than 500 employees. If you are coming for a second draw PPP loan, you must have received and used the full amount of your first PPP loan on eligible expenses that the SBA has set. The maximum loan amount is 2 million. You must not employ more than 300 employees, and you must have had a reduction of 25% or more in gross receipts in any quarter of 2020 when compared with the same quarter of 2019. I have more information on that in this presentation. The documentation that's required is pretty much the same, whether it's first or second draw loan. This information on this slide does not pertain to the independent contractors, self-employed individuals, or sole proprietors. You would have to provide either your 2019 or 2020 quarterly 941s, whichever you use to calculate your loan amount. Your state quarterly wage unemployment insurance tax reporting from each quarter in 2019 or 2020 must be the same as your 941s, and that's the report that gets filed with the Texas Workforce Commission. If your employer provides retirement or health insurance, then you can include those amounts to go towards your loan amount calculation. And they've broadened the health insurance to include group life, disability, vision, or dental insurance. And then you must provide a bank statement from January and February of 2020, just to show that your business was in operation prior to February 15th of 2020, your 2019 tax return, and then for second draw borrowers, documentation for reduction of the 25% or more in gross receipts. And then if you are an independent contractor, self-employed individual, or sole proprietor with no employees, your loan amount would be based off of your Schedule C or Schedule F for farmers or ranchers. And you can decide if you want to use that for 2019 or 2020. If you do select for 2020, you do not have to have filed your 2020 taxes, but you at least have to have your Schedule C prepared for what you would submit. You would need your 2019 or 2020, whichever you use to calculate your loan amount, and you would need a 1099 miscellaneous detailing non-employee compensation, an invoice, a bank statement, or book of record that establishes you are self-employed. So one of those items you would have to submit as well. And then you would also need your 2020 bank statement to show that you were in business prior to February 15th of 2020. And if you are self-employed, independent contractor, or sole proprietor, and you're coming back for your second draw, the reduction of 25% or more in gross receipts. And then if you are the independent contractor, self-employed, or sole proprietor, and you have employees, you can use your Schedule C for your income, and then the 941s for the same year, which you're calculating your loan on. You'd need the state quarterly wage unemployment insurance tax reports. And then if you or your business contributes towards your employees' retirement and or health insurance, you would need documentation of those. And for the second draw PPP loans, the documentation for 25% reduction in gross receipts, if your loan amount is over 150,000, you are required to submit documentation at the time of application. If your loan is 150,000 or less, that documentation you can provide at time of application, but it will be required before or at the time that you apply for forgiveness. And the SBA is very specific on the documentation that they will accept. A quarterly financial statement for the entity. If the financial statements are not audited, You must sign and date the first page of the financial statement and initial all other pages attesting to their accuracy. If the financial statements do not specifically identify the line item that constitute gross receipts, then you must make a note which line item is for gross receipts. Or you can provide a quarterly or monthly bank statement for your entity showing deposits from the relevant quarters. You must notate to where it's clear which deposits listed on the bank statement constitute gross receipts. They give an example of payments for purchases of goods and services, and which do not include capital infusions. You can also provide an annual IRS income state filing of the entity required if using an annual reference period. If the entity has not yet filed a tax return for 2020, then you must fill out the return forms, compute the relevant gross receipts value, and sign and date the return attesting that the values that are entered on the gross receipts are the same values that you will file for your 2020 taxes. And then I just put a note on here, any forgiveness amount of a first draw PPP loan that a borrower received in calendar year 2020 is to be excluded from your gross receipts. So you cannot include that in those totals. And on my resource slide, I do have a link that goes more into detail on the 25% reduction. The covered period is what they call when you're spending your funds. It begins on the date that your loan is originated. So once the bank has funded your loan and you have access to it, that's day one. And the SBA is giving you the option to spend it within 8 weeks or before the end of 24 weeks. And we'll go into what the eligible expenses are. But since your payroll is basically based off of 2.5% of your payroll cost, then if you choose the 24 weeks, you could just spend it all on payroll and not have to keep up with documentation if you were wanting to use it for utilities or rent, or they give you enough time to spend it all on payroll. So that's just my suggestion, but you don't have to do it that way. And then the eligible expenses, you must spend at least 60% of your PPP loan on payroll cost. And that includes if you are going to use it on the retirement and health, that falls in under the category of the payroll cost. And not more than 40% of your PPP loan can be spent on non-payroll cost. And the only eligible expenses they give you is for mortgage interest payments, but not mortgage prepayments or principal payments, rent payments, utility payments. And then the last four are new eligible expenses that they just recently added. And it's covered operations expenditures, covered property damage cost, covered supplier cost, covered worker protection expenditures. And if you're self-employed, you cannot use your PPP funds on those non-payroll costs if it's not something you typically claim or you're not entitled to claim on your Schedule C. So as far as that, if you need advice on that, I would get with your accountant or your CPA, and they could help you decide if you're eligible to spend it on the non-payroll cost. And for the resources, I've added the SBA PPP. IFR stands for Inter Final Ruling. And that gives the overview of the Paycheck Protection Program. There's a lot of information in it. And then the second bullet is the IFR for second draw loans. Again, a lot of information on it. But the last two bullets are very helpful as far as knowing how to calculate your maximum loan amount based on what type of business you are. They go into details and give examples, and it's very helpful. And the last bullet goes into a lot of detail on the 25% reduction and how to calculate your maximum loan amount. But those, are some very helpful resources that we use all the time. And that's my presentation, but ready for questions and answers. Let me stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions? I do have a few questions that were submitted that I can go over as well.
So I have had a couple of people sent, I guess they entered in the chat, but they sent it directly to me. So please feel free to do so. We have one other question that just popped up, but I'll start with the two I've received. And I think probably you answered some of these questions, but the question was about documentation for the 25% reduction. How would a nonprofit show those if they don't actually sell items and instead they typically just get donations in to help support their nonprofit?
That's a good question. I'd have to find out. I haven't had any nonprofits with a 25% reduction yet. But I can get that answer.
Okay. And the next question is, this is an interesting question. Can an independent contractor who is currently receiving emergency pandemic unemployment also get a PPP loan?
That I'm not sure of.
Got you two whoppers there. Those
yeah,
are
I mean, because it's based on your income for 2019 or 2020. So I would check with your CPA if it's something that you can add to your Schedule C, because that's what it's based on, is your Schedule C. Line 31 of your Schedule C is what your payroll amount is that we divide by 12 and times by 2.5.
Okay. And then the other question I received was in the approved, I guess I'm going to add to this question, but the question is, under approved expenses, the question is IRA or 401ks, is that an approved expense?
Retirement, they just say retirement, so they don't go into explanation. So I mean, I would maybe think so, because it is if it is,
yeah, that's a retirement
employer contributes, so it is a type of retirement.
We also received a question here: can small businesses who do not have payroll apply for PPP? I think that question is has to do with people that are owners or independent contractor or own their business, but they don't have other employees, is the question.
You don't have to have employees. We would take it by the tax return. If you file a Schedule C, then yes. If you have K1s for a partnership, that is one of the calculations we can do.
So I think a good example here on this question is if you are, for example, well, I'll use my own business as an example. We're a DBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only person that receives income under that DBA are the owners of the business. Is that an eligible business that could apply for this?
Yes, that's a DBA is considered a sole proprietor.
Okay. So sole proprietor would be based on their tax return that they filed last year. Am I correct? How much was income, and then you would calculate 2.5% of whatever they designated as income.
You divide it by 12 and then calculate it by 2 and multiply it by 2.5.
And okay, so that seems like that answered the question. I've got this question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, one thing that's gets a little confusing for people too. So if you own a business and you don't have employees, but you pay an independent contractor, you cannot claim what you pay the independent contractor, because that independent contractor is eligible to receive their own PPP loan.
Okay. Is there a certain percentage of loss from last year that plays into applying for the PPP? I think maybe this has to do with your second round 25%.
That would only be second draw. If you're getting your first PPP loan, there is no loss or reduction that you have to say you had, but for second draws, it is the 25% gross receipts reduction. And you say take quarter 2 of 2019 compared to quarter 2 of 2020. It can be any quarter in 19, but it has to be compared to the same quarter in 2020 to see if you have the 25% reduction.
And so on behalf of the folks that are on here, because I'm interested in this question as well, understanding how to figure out that 25% loss, is it, I think you said that it had to be during a specific time frame. Is that correct?
It has to be a quarter in 20, and it has to be calendar quarter. So quarter 1, 2, 3, or 4 in 2019 compared to that same quarter in 2020. You can't just like pick, you can't just pick 3 months out of the year. It has to be a calendar quarter.
But it could be any quarter.
It could be any quarter.
Any of the 4 quarters. Okay.
Yes.
And so documenting that can be done through, can you go back through that list of ways that they can document the loss?
Yes. Well, maybe. So you can do your quarterly financial statements. You can do quarterly or monthly bank statements. Typically you would do monthly bank statements, but for all 3 months in that quarter. And then if you can do it over the annual reference period. And if you do that, then you have to have IRS income tax filings for the entity.
So let's
just like financial statements, P&Ls, bank statements, and tax filings.
So you could actually use financial statements that are created out of your own like QuickBooks program, or yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I would assume a lot of small businesses probably might not have those audited. So if you don't have them audited, they're just specific that you must sign and date the first page and then initial every other page that's in it, attesting to the accuracy of what's in it.
Okay. I'm gonna stop your share again.
Okay.
So I know you received we received some questions before
Yes.
today from various, so if you want to go through those questions.
Okay, one of the ones that came in is how do we get the loan funds to become a grant so we don't have to pay them back? As long as you spend the funds on the eligible expenses within 8 to 24 weeks and keep your documentation, then you file for forgiveness with wherever you have it funded at, and then the SBA forgives it. Now you have to keep your documentation up to 6 years because the SBA at any time could come back and ask to audit your records up to 6 years. So, and that's not something that they would come to the bank to get. I mean, they'd probably send it through the bank, but it's up to the borrower to make sure they retain those documents so they don't have to pay it back. And then one of the other questions, if we apply for the first round right now, can we then apply for the second round? I haven't seen anything that says that, but one of the requirements for getting a second PPP loan is that you have to have received the first PPP loan and spend the funds before you could apply for the second one. So I don't know if they're going to open that up to where you could get two within this time period, and March 31st is the deadline to apply for one. And then the other question that came in is, do I have to have an account with First National Bank to get a PPP? My bank isn't doing the program. First National Bank's board of directors has allowed for us to fund so much money for this program. So primarily we are focusing on our customers so that we can make sure that we have enough funds to fund those for our customers. If the demand slows down, it is a possibility that, we can fund it for non-customers. If you have a personal account, but not a business account, you're still a customer of First National Bank. So we still have that customer relationship. So that is still good. And, just with any program out there, there's always the possibility for fraud. And so, we know our customer base and, we're comfortable with that. So not saying we will never fund for non-customers, but at the moment, it is primarily for our customers. But a company called Lindio that we have contracted with, and the portals on our website for you to electronically apply and upload the documents for the PPP loan. If you apply through there and, we're not able to do it, we send it out to Lindio, and they have investors and banks that will fund the PPP loan. So, you don't have to try and you can go through Lindio and get your PPP loan funded that way too.
Oh, that's a good point. To be clear, for those of you that are on today, if you do not have if your banking institution does not participate, what Stacy is saying is there are independent institutions, for example, Lindio, that you can go in and you don't have an account with them and you can apply using their service. Is that what you're saying, Stacy?
Yes, they're kind of the middleman. They take the application, they'll send it to us, and we've gotten a lot from California and all over, that nobody knows them. So we just have to protect ourselves for fraud. But you can apply through the Lindio link to get your PPP loan. They will find, if we're not able to do it, they will find an institution that can.
So Lindio is Lendio, is that correct?
Yes, and there's a link on our website under the PPP information.
On the First National Bank site.
Yes.
The next question is, do you know which local banking institutions are participating in this round besides First National Bank?
I don't know who's participating this round for sure. I know we are, Frontier in Bastrop, they are as well, but I don't know what their standards are either.
I know Prosperity Bank is also.
Are they? Okay. I didn't
also participating.
Okay.
The next question is, I'm not sure if I missed it, but are businesses that are that have W-2 employees eligible for the loan?
Yes, because if you're W-2, you should be filing 941s.
Okay. Do you have any other questions that we gave to you early on?
They were in my presentation.
I have another question that came up that says, if you receive the PPP loan and you also received an SBA EIDL loan, does one cancel the other?
There were two different EIDLs. There was the EIDL grant and the EIDL loan. The EIDL grant, you didn't have to pay back. The EIDL loan you did. So which one?
This is SBA EIDL loan is the question.
Loan. Okay. I know there was in the application part, it asked if you received an EIDL loan in the first part of 2020 and if you were planning on refinancing it with this. But people who received EIDL also received PPP.
So they don't impact each other unless you received it during that specific time frame, which you'll be asked anyway when you apply
in the application. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that is all the questions that I've received so far. Anyone else have any other questions? I'll just give people a couple minutes here to log into this to give us any more questions you have. That was a lot of questions to ask.
Yeah,
that's good. Have you had oh, here's another one that just popped up. Are you concerned that the program will run out of money before everyone can apply?
We have not received an update from SBA as to where they are at with funds. Once they do start to run low, then they will, send us a notification. Just from different conversations with different banks and groups that the bank has connections with, a lot of people are thinking that they're not going to run out of funds, but it's not a guarantee. We don't know.
Will the slides be made available for download?
Yes, if I figure out how to do it.
So I'll answer that question, and I'm going to ask Stacy to send me her slides, and I will email them to everyone that registered for this class. We
Okay.
will also, of course, when we archive this presentation, we'll include a copy of the slides in the archive location on the website.
Yes, and anybody that's in here, if you have questions as you're going through the process, whether we fund it or not, you can give me a call and I can help answer any questions that you have.
I will be glad to give a testimonial. The chamber, of course, certainly applied for this program, and it was a very easy, simple process to go through. Stacy could not have been nicer about making sure that I understood what all the terms meant and telling me if I gave her the right or wrong information. It was a seamless process, and I feel comfortable that regardless of what type of entity you are, we're a nonprofit, of course, but regardless of what kind of entity you are, the bank will be able to help you through the process. And remember, if you are an independent contractor, which means you don't think of yourself necessarily as a brick and mortar business, maybe you're a home-based business, you still are eligible for these funds and should certainly apply for them. Because remember, if you use these funds to pay yourself as the employee of your business, and you use them appropriately as laid out in this program, it becomes a grant. So there's really, even if for some reason you don't get it, I'm not sure I see a reason not to apply and see if you can become eligible for it. Would you agree with that, Stacy?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Well, I have not received any more questions. So unless somebody else wants to jump up right now, I think that we are done just a few minutes early, but that's okay. I do appreciate again Stacy Tyner, who is with the Smithville branch of the First National Bank of Bastrop, the Smithville location, who is the branch manager here and a loan officer as well, for making herself available for our presentation today. And if we have no more questions, we're going to end our presentation a little bit early. I want to again also thank the Smithville Public Library and the the various agencies that helped us fund these programs. Recall, if you'll go to the Smithville Chamber of Commerce website, smithvilletx.org, you will see several classes available to you in a variety of different topics. We're offering 40 different classes between now and the end of August. So take a look at those classes and please feel free to watch them in real time or watch them after we archive them. Stacy, again, thank you very much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.